Okay, I'm studying lymphatic nodes. So far I know that the
That then.
lymphatic system helps with pretty much is the it pretty much filters waste and pretty much there's like your blood cells, your blood system goes through, takes um lots of things, and then the lymphatic system helps with um it helps with like with all those things that your the blood system's taking. The lymphatic system helps it pretty much filter the the whatever your blood took, and it pretty much makes it that pretty much is like security for any abnormalities.
You're pretty close. But let me clean it up for you. The lymphatic system and your blood system are two separate things. Here's the simple and correct version. Your blood carries oxygen, nutrients, and removes waste from your cells. Your lymphatic system is a completely different system. It drains extra fluid that leaks out of your blood vessels into your tissues. This fluid, called lymph, can carry bacteria, viruses, and dead cells. The lymph nodes act like filters. They trap those bad things and let your immune cells destroy them. So the lymph nodes are more like infection checkpoints than waste filters for the blood. They mostly protect you from infections and cancer cells. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I didn't. Yeah, I know there's difference between. I know there's a difference. I know that. Okay, whatever. So the lymph vessel of the leg. That's where I'm at. Lymph.
Got it. The main lymph vessel in your leg is called the thoracic duct. Wait, no. Let me correct that. In your legs, the main lymph vessels are the iliac lymph vessels and the lumbar lymph trunks. These eventually feed into the thoracic duct, which is the biggest lymph vessel in your whole body. But the most important ones for you to know right now are the popliteal lymph nodes behind the knee and the inguinal lymph nodes in the groin. These are the major checkpoints that drain the entire leg. Want me to explain where they're located and how to find them?
What about the superficial inguinal lymph node?
All lymph nodes. These are the ones located in your groin area, right where your leg meets your pelvis. They're pretty easy to feel if they're swollen. They sit in the crease of your upper thigh, just below the inguinal ligament. There are usually about 8 to 10 of them in that area. They drain lymph from your entire lower leg, your thigh, your buttocks, the external genitalia, the lower part of your belly. These are the most important lymph nodes for the lower body. When you get an infection on your foot or leg, these nodes in the groin are usually the ones that swell up.
What about the deep inguinal lymph node?
Nodes. These are located in the same groin area, but they sit deeper than the superficial ones. Key differences. They're fewer in number, usually only 3 to 5 nodes. They lie deeper, right next to the big femoral blood vessels. They're harder to feel because they're buried under muscle and fat. While the superficial inguinal nodes drain the skin and surface of the leg, the deep inguinal nodes drain the deeper structures, like the muscles and joints of the leg. They also receive lymph from the superficial nodes before sending it higher up. They're located around the femoral vein, very close to where you'd feel for a femoral pulse.
What about
Deep inguinal lymph.
ILIAC?
There are two groups, external iliac and internal iliac lymph nodes. They sit higher up than the inguinal nodes, inside your pelvis along the iliac blood vessels. External iliac nodes mainly receive lymph that comes from the inguinal nodes from your legs. Internal iliac nodes drain the pelvic organs, like the bladder, rectum, prostate in men, and parts of the reproductive system. These are deeper and cannot be felt from the outside. They act as the next checkpoint after the groin nodes, sending the lymph even higher up toward the lumbar nodes and eventually into the thoracic duct. Want me to show you where they sit compared to the inguinal nodes?
So iliac lymph node. Tell me more about it.
Lymph nodes. They sit inside your pelvis, along the iliac blood vessels. There are two main groups. External iliac nodes. These are the ones that directly receive all the lymph coming up from your groin. Inguinal nodes. So basically, everything from your legs has to pass through them. Internal iliac nodes. These drain your pelvic organs, bladder, rectum, reproductive organs. Together, they act as the second major checkpoint after the groin nodes. From here, the lymph then moves up to the lumbar nodes, and finally into the thoracic duct. You can't feel these from the outside because they're deep inside the pelvis.
What about the superficial inguinal lymph node? Inguinal lymph node.
Superficial inguinal lymph nodes are the ones you can actually feel in your groin. Here's the important stuff. Location. They're in the crease where your thigh meets your lower belly, right in the groin area. How many? Usually around 8 to 10 small nodes. What they drain? Pretty much everything on the surface, your whole leg, foot, buttocks, lower belly, and the outside of the genitals. These are the nodes that commonly swell up when you have an infection on your leg, foot, or a cut in that area. You can usually feel them if they're swollen. They feel like small, tender lumps in your groin. Want me to tell you exactly where to feel for them?
Yeah.
To feel your superficial inguinal lymph nodes, put your hand in your groin crease, that fold where your thigh meets your lower stomach.
Alright, forget
Feel
it.
around about
How
2
about the PARACOLIC lymph node?
Paracolic lymph nodes, also called paracolic nodes, are located right along the sides of the colon, in the mesentery close to the colon wall. They're the first major group of nodes that drain the large intestine. Lymph flows from the colon wall into these nodes, then moves to other nodes like the mesocolic and superior inferior mesenteric nodes. They're deep inside your abdomen, so you can't feel them from the outside. They're important because if there's an infection or cancer in the colon, these nodes are usually the first ones affected.
What about the CISTERNA?
CHYLI. This one's actually pretty interesting. The cisterna chyli is not a lymph node. It's a big, sac-like swelling at the very beginning of the thoracic duct. Here's what you need to know. It's located in your abdomen, right in front of your spine at about the level of your belly button. It acts like a collecting tank. All the lymph from your legs, pelvis, and intestines drains into the cisterna chyli. It's especially important because it collects the milky, fat-rich lymph that comes from your intestines. That's why it's called chyli. From the cisterna chyli, all that lymph then flows upward through the thoracic duct and eventually empties into your bloodstream near your left collarbone. Want me to explain how big it is?
Tell me more about it.
The Ciastena cheli. It's a large pouch-like sac, about 5 to 7 centimeters long, roughly 2 to 3 inches. It sits deep in your abdomen, right in front of the spine, around the L1, L2 level, about at the level of your belly button. Its main job is to collect lymph from the entire lower half of your body, both legs, pelvis, and all the intestines. It especially collects the milky, fat-rich lymph that comes from your small intestine after you eat fatty foods. That's why it's called cheli, from the word for juice or fluid. Think of it as the main collecting station before all that lymph goes up through the thoracic duct into your bloodstream. Want me to tell you what happens if it gets damaged?
Alrighty, so this cisterna cilia, like, tell me why it's so important.
Cheli is actually very important. It's basically the main collection point for almost all the lymph in the lower half of your body. Specifically, all the lymph from both of your legs, all the lymph from your pelvis, all the lymph from your intestines. Everything from the waist down drains into the cisterna cheli first. From there, it all gets pumped up through the thoracic duct and returns to your bloodstream. It's especially important after you eat fatty foods because it collects all the fat absorbed from your intestines. If the cisterna cheli or thoracic duct gets blocked or damaged, you can get serious swelling in your legs or even leakage of milky fluid into your abdomen. So in short, it's the central hub for lymph from the entire lower body.
Cisternal. So it's like a highway where all the nodes go to go to the lower body.
Not exactly. Think of it more like a main merging point, not a highway that all nodes go through. Here's the clearer picture. All the lymph from your legs and lower body first goes through the inguinal nodes, then the iliac nodes, then the lumbar nodes. After passing through those nodes, all that lymph finally empties into the cisterna cheli. So the cisterna cheli is like the final bus station where all the lymph from the entire lower half of your body gathers before it gets sent up to your chest through the thoracic duct. It's the last stop before the lymph returns to your blood.
What about the PHERNIC lymph node?
Phrenic lymph nodes, also called superior diaphragmatic lymph nodes, sit on top of your diaphragm, inside the chest. They're split into 3 small groups: anterior, near the lower part of your breastbone; middle, near where the phrenic nerves enter the diaphragm; posterior, toward the back of the diaphragm. They mainly drain lymph from the diaphragm itself and the top surface of the liver. From there, the lymph moves to other nodes like the peristernal or mediastinal nodes. They're deep inside, so you can't feel them. They're mostly important in cancer staging, especially for lung, breast, or liver cancers. Want me to compare them to the ones we talked about earlier, like the iliac or inguinal?
Yeah, compared to the cisterna cilia.
Simple breakdown. The cisterna is like a big collecting bag. Almost all the lymph from your legs, pelvis, and intestines has to pass through it. It's a major hub. The phrenic lymph nodes, on the other hand, are small and only responsible for draining the diaphragm and the top part of the liver. They're minor players in comparison. Big difference. The cisterna is a critical central point for the entire lower body. The phrenic nodes are small.
So what would happen if you get shot where the cisterna cilia is?
If you get shot in the cisterna and leak chyle, that milky, fat-rich lymph fluid,
Can you say that again?
if you get shot where the cisterna is, it's really dangerous. The cisterna would rupture and start leaking milky white fluid, called chelae, into your abdomen. This fluid is full of fat and nutrients. You'd quickly lose a lot of fat and protein, your belly would swell up with fluid, and you could become severely malnourished. Even if the bullet misses everything else, this injury alone can be life-threatening because the leak is very difficult to fix. It's one of the worst abdominal injuries you can get.
What about the superior mesenteric lymph node?
Superior mesenteric lymph nodes. These are a big cluster of lymph nodes located in your abdomen, around the superior mesenteric artery. They mainly drain lymph from your small intestine, part of your large intestine, and the pancreas. They're very important because they handle a huge amount of lymph from the gut, especially after you eat. They sit deep in the center of your belly, around the root of the mesentery. You can't feel them from the outside. These nodes are often involved in abdominal infections or intestinal cancers. Want me to tell you where they sit compared to the cisterna chyli?
Tell me about the pyloric lymph node.
Lymph nodes. These are the lymph nodes that sit directly on both sides of the aorta, the body's main artery in your abdomen. Here's the simple breakdown. They're located deep in your belly, running alongside the aorta, mostly between your belly button and your lower back. They receive lymph from many places, including the intestines, kidneys, ovaries, testicles, and from the iliac nodes. They act as one of the final filtering stations before the lymph goes into the cisterna chyli. They're very deep, so you can't feel them. These nodes are important because many cancers, like testicular, ovarian, or colon cancer, often spread to the para-aortic nodes first. Want me to compare them to the superior mesenteric nodes we just talked about?
No, tell me about the left superior pancreatic lymph node.
The left superior pancreatic lymph nodes sit along the upper edge of the pancreas body, toward the left side, closer to the spleen. They mainly drain lymph from the body of the pancreas. From there, the lymph typically flows to the splenic lymph nodes, along the splenic artery, or directly to the celiac lymph nodes. These are deep inside the abdomen, so you can't feel them. They're mostly relevant in pancreatic cancer staging or infections involving the pancreas. Want me to compare them to the superior mesenteric nodes we talked about earlier?
Tell me about the THORACICTUCT.
Thoracic duct. The thoracic duct is the largest lymph vessel in your entire body. Here's what you need to know. It's a long, thin tube that starts from the cisterna chyli in your abdomen. It runs up through your chest, thorax, along the spine. It finally empties all the collected lymph back into your bloodstream near your left collarbone. Its job is to carry lymph from almost the entire lower half of your body, plus the left side of your chest, left arm, and left side of the head. It's basically the main highway for lymph to return to your blood. Want me to tell you how big it is and why it's so important?
Tell me about the intercostal lymph node.
Intercostal lymph nodes. These are small lymph nodes located between your ribs, along the back of your rib cage. They run along the intercostal spaces near the spine. Their main job is to drain lymph from the muscles and skin between the ribs, as well as parts of the chest wall. They're pretty small and deep, so you can't feel them from the outside. These nodes are important because they can get involved in infections of the chest wall or certain types of lung and breast cancers. Compared to the thoracic duct, they're much smaller and only handle a very local area of the chest.
It's really interesting because it's like where the rib cage is. It's very similar to the called intercostal nerve 10, or just 1 to 12.
You're making a good connection. The intercostal lymph nodes and the intercostal nerves both run in the same general area, between the ribs. However, they're slightly different in position. The intercostal nerves run along the bottom of each rib in the costal groove. The intercostal lymph nodes are located more toward the back, closer to the spine. So while they're in the same region, between the ribs, the nerves are more focused on muscle control and sensation, while the lymph nodes are there to filter fluid and fight infection in that area.
So
Good observation.
So what's it called when when the lymph node has a ball, and what is it called when it branches off and it has an end terminal?
Answer to your two questions. 1. When a lymph node feels like a ball, that round ball-like swelling is called lymphadenopathy. When you can feel a swollen lymph node, people often just call it a swollen gland or a lymph node swelling. If it feels hard, fixed, and painless, that's more concerning. 2. What it's called when it branches off and has an end terminal. You're thinking of afferent and efferent lymph vessels. Afferent vessels equals the small tubes that bring lymph into the lymph node. Afferent vessels equals the tubes that carry lymph out of the lymph node after it's been filtered. So every lymph node has multiple afferent vessels coming in, and usually just 1 or 2 efferent vessels going out. Want me to explain how lymph actually flows through a single node?
What about the paratracheal lymph node?
in your chest. Here's the important info. They're located in the central part of your chest, on both sides of the trachea. They drain lymph from the lungs, trachea, and esophagus. They are very important nodes in lung cancer staging. Doctors always check these nodes to see if cancer has spread. Because they're deep inside your chest, you can't feel them from the outside. They're considered part of the mediastinal lymph nodes. Would you like me to compare them to the intercostal nodes we just talked about?
Tell me about the deltopical lymph node.
Deltopectoral lymph nodes, also called infraclavicular nodes. These are small lymph nodes located in the upper chest-shoulder area, right in the groove between your pectoralis major, chest muscle, and deltoid, shoulder muscle, just below the clavicle, collarbone. They sit next to the cephalic vein. They mainly drain lymph from the lateral part of the arm, shoulder, and sometimes the upper lateral breast. They then send the lymph to the apical axillary nodes, the top group in the armpit. They're not very big and usually can't be felt unless they're swollen. In breast cancer cases, these nodes have recently gotten attention because drainage through them might actually help protect against lymphedema after surgery. Is this the one you meant, or were you thinking of something else?
What about the lateral axillary humeral lymph node?
Lateral axillary lymph nodes, also called humeral lymph nodes. These are located in the armpit, along the lower part of the axillary vein. Here's what you should know. They sit on the inner side of your upper arm, right where it meets the armpit. They mainly drain lymph from the entire arm, hand, forearm, and upper arm. They are one of the 5 main groups of axillary lymph nodes. Out of all the axillary nodes, the lateral humeral group is usually the first group that lymph from your arm passes through. If you have an infection or cut on your hand or arm, these are often the first nodes in the armpit that will swell up. Want me to tell you where exactly to feel for them?
Yeah.
Lateral axillary humeral lymph nodes. Raise your arm up a bit, then reach your opposite hand deep into your armpit, closer to the inner side of your upper arm. Feel along the upper inner part of your arm, right where it meets the armpit. These nodes sit right next to the big vein there. You're looking for small, soft lumps along that inner wall of the armpit. They're usually easier to feel if they're swollen or tender. Try both sides to compare.
Oh, I have another question that I just remembered about, but this time about nerves. So when I'm sore from a workout and I stretch, I can really feel the soreness. That's like a nerve that's attached to the soreness.
What you're feeling when you stretch sore muscles is actually the muscle spindle and free nerve endings inside the muscle. When your muscle gets damaged from a workout, it becomes inflamed. Those free nerve endings, pain receptors, become very sensitive. When you stretch the muscle, you're pulling on those inflamed, irritated nerve endings, which makes the soreness feel much stronger. So it's not one specific named nerve, like the ulnar or radial. It's just the pain sensors inside the muscle itself reacting to the stretch. That sharp, good pain feeling you get when stretching sore muscles is those irritated nerve endings firing off.
But it's actually quite good to like massage the sore muscle. Why?
Muscles. Here's why. It increases blood flow to the area, which helps bring more oxygen and nutrients to repair the damaged muscle. It helps flush out waste products like lactic acid and inflammatory chemicals that build up after a workout. It relaxes tight muscle fibers and reduces stiffness. However, you have to do it the right way, gentle to moderate pressure. If you press too hard on a very sore muscle, you can actually make the inflammation worse. Best time to massage is usually 24 to 48 hours after the workout, not right when it's at its most painful.
How do I keep a window open and use another window at the same time? Like,
On your phone, swipe up from the bottom of the
no,
screen
on the
and
computer.
pause for a second. On a computer, here's the easiest way. Hold down the Windows key and press the left arrow key. This will snap the current window to the left half of your screen. Then open the other window you want and hold Windows key plus right arrow to snap it to the right side. Now you have two windows open side by side at the same time. You can drag the middle line left or right if you want to resize them. Want me to tell you the Mac version too?
Alright, tell me about the superior deep lateral cervical lymph node.
Superior deep lateral cervical lymph nodes. These are a group of important lymph nodes that run deep along the side of your neck, following the internal jugular vein. Here's what you need to know. They're located deep under the sternocleidomastoid muscle, the big rope-like muscle on the side of your neck. They drain lymph from the head, face, tongue, tonsils, and throat. These are the main nodes that commonly swell when you have a sore throat, tonsillitis, or mouth infection. Because they're deep, you usually can't feel them unless they're quite swollen. They're considered very important nodes. Doctors often check them when looking for signs of infection or cancer in the head and neck area. Want me to show you roughly where they sit on the neck?
What about the superior deep lateral cervical lymph node? Simplify what you said.
Simplified, the superior deep lateral cervical lymph nodes are a chain of important lymph nodes that sit deep in the side of your neck, underneath the big neck muscle. They mainly drain fluid from your head, face, mouth, and throat. These are the main nodes that swell up when you have a sore throat or tonsillitis. You usually can't feel them because they're deep under the muscle. Simple version, they're the deep lymph nodes on the side of your neck that clean up infections from your head and throat.
What about the subparotid lymph node?
Subparotid lymph nodes. Simple explanation. These are small lymph nodes located just below the parotid gland, right under your ear, behind your jaw. They mainly drain lymph from the outer ear, the ear canal, parts of the cheek and temple area. Because they sit right under the parotid gland, the salivary gland in front of your ear, they're called subparotid nodes. They're fairly small and deep, so you usually can't feel them unless they're swollen from an ear infection or skin infection around that RA.
What about, tell me about the OCCIPITAL lymph node.
Occipital lymph nodes. These are small lymph nodes located at the back of your head, right at the base of your skull. Simple breakdown. They sit where your neck meets the back of your head, near the occipital bone. They mainly drain the back of your scalp, the back of your neck, and the area around your ears. They're usually easy to feel if they're swollen. They feel like small lumps at the very back of your head. These nodes commonly swell up if you have an infection on your scalp, like dandruff, a bad cut, or an infected pimple on the back of your head. You can usually find them by feeling along the base of your skull where your neck starts.
And now, what about the SUBMANTL divular lymph node.
Mandibular lymph nodes. These are the lymph nodes located under your jawbone, on both sides of your chin. Simple explanation. They sit right underneath your lower jaw, about halfway between your chin and your ear. They drain lymph from your lower lip, chin, lower teeth, gums, and the front part of your tongue. These are the nodes that commonly swell up when you have a tooth infection, sore throat, or cold sores around your mouth. You can usually feel them pretty easily. If you slide your fingers under your jawbone and press gently upward, you can often feel these nodes, especially if they're swollen or tender.
Now I gotta learn about the heart. What's the best method to learn about the heart?
For you, since you learn best by asking questions and going piece by piece, like we did with nerves and lymph nodes, here's the smartest way to learn the heart. Start with the big picture first, then break it down. Here's the best order. 1. What the heart actually looks like and where it sits. 2. The 4 chambers, right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. 3. The 4 valves and what they do. 4. How blood flows through the heart, the path. 5. The electrical system, how it beats. Want to start with step 1 right now? I'll explain where the heart is and what it actually looks like in a simple way today.
Let's start with the 2 TRICUSPID ATRIOVENTRICULAR valve. Did you hear me? Yeah, so yeah, the right TRICUSPID atrioventricular valve.
Valve on the right side of your heart. Simple explanation. It sits between the right atrium and the right ventricle. It has 3 flaps. That's why it's called tricuspid.
Are you there?
Today's topic is tricuspid valve disease. Tricuspid valve disease is a condition in which the function of the tricuspid valve is impaired. The tricuspid valve is located.
Hello again, everyone. This is Matt. This is Matt from KenHub. And in this tutorial, we will specifically explore the anatomy, function, and area of the tricuspid valve. The valves of the heart serve the cardiovascular system by controlling the direction of the blood flow during circulation and determining the exact moment in which the blood passes between the chambers of the heart, as well as in and out of it entirely. The tricuspid valve, also known as the right atrioventricular valve, is one of two atrioventricular valves. As its name suggests, it has three separate cusps. It sits between the right atrium and right ventricle, functioning to prevent the backflow of atrial blood accumulation when it passes onto the ventricle. The atrioventricular valves attach to the ventricular walls via the chordae tendineae, which in turn attach to the papillary muscles so that the cusps are held tense and don't invert into the atria. This extended attachment of the chordae tendineae and the papillary muscles is known as the subvalvular apparatus. The tricuspid valve has three cusps, each named for their location: an anterior, a posterior, and a septal cusp. The valves of the heart control the blood flow in and out of the heart. Specifically, the atrioventricular valves function to prevent the backflow of blood from the ventricles to the atria during cardiac systole. Opening and closing of the valves is governed by the gradient pressure across the valves themselves, and the first heart sound can be heard when the atrioventricular valves close. When you hear the classic lub-dub sound the heart makes, the tricuspid valve is contributing to the lub sound. This video is more
Hey Grok, are you there? No? Oh, hey Grok.
Hey, what's up?
Tell me about the tricuspid valve. Wait, I can't hear you. Maybe I should learn about the heart tomorrow. I mean, I learned about a whole freaking system that I didn't even know about my body that takes place in my body. That everywhere in my body. What the heck are those? Oh, it's like a little HUD. Oh, baby girl, what's your name? Let me talk to you. Okay. Think I'm logging off. I gotta put my good outro song.